Hello, 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 ladies. Welcome to the Get Your Guy Coaching podcast. I have an amazing guest with me who I'm so happy to have on this podcast. We're going to talk about sex appeal and so many other things. Our girl Shan Boodram. Thank you so much for being here with us. Sex expert, everything sex, intimacy, and I had to have you on this podcast because, um, girl, we have to talk about it. We have to talk about sex.
Yes.
We have to talk about sex appeal because the girls maybe don't know about their sex appeal. So thank you so much for being here. How are you doing?
I'm so damn good. It's always so weird in the beginning of a podcast. Like, when do I pop out the cake? Like, do I, hey, or do I wait till the intro is done? I just was smiling, just reflecting on how much we've gotten to get to know each other over
Yeah.
the past couple of months. And now being more familiar with your work and with your origin story, getting to, send people to you and getting to watch more of your content. So it's such a joy to be here with somebody who I really admire. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here, girl. It's so interesting because a couple of months ago, I was asking all of my followers, okay, who should I have on the podcast? And like, your name was the name that like rose to like the top spot because the girls love you, they respect you, and they honor just like the wisdom that you have. So I'm just really happy that you're on this podcast and we get to talk about sex, intimacy, and sex appeal. So,
Well, it's mutual. I hope the reason why people feel that way towards me is because they feel that it is mutual. I genuinely believe that everybody deserves to be their own sex expert, their own dating coach, their own intimacy expert.
yeah.
It's an area of our lives that is makes such a huge impact on the way that we feel about our time here. So why not get to a place where you feel like I know me better than me? Of course, experts like yourself and myself can provide jump off points, food for thought,
Yeah,
guidance, but the goal is for you to take this information and make it your own. It's like
that's right.
dancing. You're going to get the choreography, but you're going to put your own groove, your own spin on it. And then the joy of that is that in turn, I get to learn from you. I've been in school for so freaking long,
Oh my
and
God.
without a shadow of a doubt, my number one educator has been people.
Yeah.
And everyday conversations with people who just share their nuggets of wisdom, the things that they learned from their grandparents, the things that they learned from their cultural background. So I hope that people have an appreciation for me because I deeply appreciate and revere the expertise in them.
I love that. So, girl, why don't you share a little bit of your origin story and how you kind of got into the work that you do now for the listeners that don't know you and also for the listeners that do?
I love that. Okay, I'll try to give the TLDR version of this
Yeah,
because,
girl, you know the
yeah,
tea.
I've been in this space for 21 years now, Anwar.
Wow.
But long story short is that I have Caribbean parents, and I was naturally interested in the human body and in intimacy. By age 7, I was addicted to soap operas, just like loved the tea and like who's dating who, who's getting married, who's
Uh-huh.
having an affair. By age 5 or so, my Barbies were banned from being naked because I just was like, oh, it's just natural because like this person and that person have been going together for a while. And there was never any foul play. I'm very fortunate to have a wonderful childhood. It was just a genuine interest in this area of life. And so when you have Caribbean parents who are young, who are watching a kid kind of have this natural interest, it's not like it's the piano where they're like, let's encourage it. They're like, let's shut this down.
Right.
And so essentially, I learned that this part of me made the people that I loved disappointed in me. I was
Mm.
called lewd a lot as a child. And so when I got a little bit older and I had the natural interest, plus I had hormones, I had learned that, oh, I have to keep this part of myself private. And that doesn't change the fact that you still have the interest. So you still have the drive, but you now have the wisdom to understand that you have to pretend that you don't. So
Mm.
essentially, I got my fix from fiction things. I talk about the books that really shaped me were Zane, Coldest Winter Ever, Omar Tyree's Fly Girl, Connie Briscoe's Big Girls Don't Cry, and porn and TV shows. And I'm not saying this like in any positive way because while these books were wonderful and they were entertaining, they were really not factual and they were not
Mm.
sex positive and they were androcentric books about women's sexuality. So naturally, when that is your leadership, then you're going to go into relationships with a very penis focused ideal around what pleasure is supposed to include or what sex is supposed to be like. So by the time that I got to 19 years old, I'd had multiple sexual partners, zero orgasms, super low
Mm.
self-esteem. I'd been to the sexual health clinic several times. I'd had scares for pregnancy. I'd had scares for STDs. And I was like, oh, okay, let's press the brakes. Like either one
Yeah.
of two things are happening. Either my parents and my school, I went to a Catholic school. So that reinforcement of your body's not to be touched, that pleasure is evil, that pleasure is only for married couples. So a lot of that was reinforced. So I was like, okay, well, either Catholic school and my parents and all the elders in my life were right. This is a really dangerous thing that only causes harm and pain. Or I just have bad information. So I
Mhm.
placed a bet on the former, got a library card, and read every boring ass book about sex. I mean, dry, stat filled, faceless, monotonous, like no story, no heart. I'm like, where's my girl Winter? Like, where are these stories that I was so
Yeah.
fixated with, along with the good information? And so I did learn so much. And my big aha was there's so much great life changing information out there on intimacy, on specifically female sexual pleasure. And I thought to myself, somebody has to make this as accessible as the books I used to read, as the porn that I used to watch. So that became my mission, is to make sex ed sexy. Started that 21 years ago. And I think that to this day, my big driving force is how do I not only make intimacy education something that people understand is important, but something that they have fun doing?
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I was just imagining the listeners saying to themselves, yeah, girl, that's me. When I was growing up, they had to lock down anything that was sexual around me, right? So, can you talk to me a little bit about just like societal standards, especially as it pertains to women of color, Black women, about their sex, as well as just like sex appeal in general and how that's stereotyped?
Yeah, it's a completely confusing landscape because it's so dichotomized, right? You've got the Bible Belt, or the heavy influence of your Caribbean culture, the heavy influence of Christianity, of Puritan culture, and then you also have the over sexualization of the media. And I grew up in Canada, which you didn't, but you're there now, so we kind of swapped.
We
But
did.
we did a little switcheroo. I often say this because I didn't have like Nickelodeon growing up. I didn't have Disney. So there's so many references that people have that I'm like, oh, I never saw that TV show. Like, I didn't really watch That So Raven. That really wasn't on in Canada. I didn't get to watch like a lot of the Nick at Night shows. So there's a lot of like stuff that culturally that I missed. But one thing that did happen when I was like 13, 14 years old is that BET came to Canada.
Hmm.
And this was a huge deal for us. We're like, wow, like these are all these music videos and all these imagery that I've never gotten to see before. And as a woman of color, you don't really know what your role is sexually if you don't have visual representations. And again, 13, 14 is around the time that I started to get into the books, into the media, into the movies, into porn, etc. So when BET came, and at that time too, it was women who looked specifically like me, that sort of ambiguous Black woman who was like the forefront of it. And she was the sexy siren. Like her job was to be there to make the man look cool and to be very sexual. So you have, again, this half of the messaging that is very puritanical, and the other half that is extremely salacious and degrading. Nonetheless, it's not necessarily a positive celebration, but you kind of find yourself between these two extremes and living a double life. And I think that a lot of people can attest to that. And that also kind of speaks to like the stripping of the humanity of Black women and women of color, in that you're not allowed to be individualistic. You're not allowed to be surprising or multifaceted or dynamic. You're either the mammy or you're the Jezebel, right? Like you have to fit into one of these two roles. And if you're somewhere in the middle, well, then you better pick. And so I think that that caused a lot of confusion for me. And I know a lot of women that I've spoken to can attest to a similar experience.
Yeah, yeah. I have to call something out because you've said the word porn twice already, and I know some of the girls are gagging. Can we just like talk about that? Can we put that on the table? Can we talk about how important that might be when one is kind of navigating their own sexuality, also kind of sex appeal? Would you mind just sharing maybe a bit of your experience and how you think about it for the people that you work with and talk to?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hear your experience this as well. And I think that porn is an important tool, but it's a tool that I'm trying to liken it to like a specific tool, like a sledgehammer, where if you know how to utilize it and you know what scenarios, and it's not a
Yeah,
go-to tool for every single, I'm not using a sledgehammer to put up a picture on my wall,
right.
right? So there, it is a tool that can be very helpful and powerful, but when overutilized and without a trained eye or trained hand, it can be really dangerous. And I, again, grew up, I'm born in 1985. So I was like at the beginning of all of the technological advancements, like LimeWire, when that's the only way that you could get
Uh-huh.
porn. And I was still like in the VHS world. And so I didn't have the options that people have today in terms of ethical porn, or porn that is run by women-led studios that actually centers women's bodies in a positive way. So
Hmm.
when I was coming of age, porn was essentially a medium that was built for men, designed for the male gaze, a very androcentric perspective of what sex should look like, which essentially it begins when the penis gets hard and it ends when the penis is flaccid. And whatever happens in between then, sweetheart, you better figure it out. But like, this is
Yeah.
what sex is. And so that was my conditioning for a long time. And again, like it's even really silly things, like not knowing things about my body. I knew what the clitoris was, but I was a product of the time that I grew up where it was, well, where is it? You know? So even in
Uh-huh.
myself, I knew that there was a clitoris, but because I watched porn and women scream so much during sex, in my mind, oh, the clitoris is somewhere in the vagina and it's like a secret button that only the right penis can hit. And
Mm.
so after having sex with seven penises and not finding it, I was like, well, maybe this is bad information.
Uh-huh.
So, right? Like, and that's a pretty crazy thing to think about. You know, you are engaging with sex with other people and you don't even know how your own body works, which is also kind of fascinating too, because even though I had this belief system and understanding of the clitoris, I still knew how to masturbate.
Hmm.
And I still masturbated with my clitoris. I just didn't call it that or know what that was. And I kind of had this idea that the genuine, real pleasure was going to come, you know, from the way that I saw it in porn.
Um, let's talk about sex appeal.
Please,
Let's
yes.
talk about sex appeal because I know that you have a master class on it, and I wanted
Yeah.
to bring some of those nuggets and some of those that wisdom to this podcast a little bit because I think a lot of us kind of don't know what it is or haven't really defined it for ourselves. So I'd be curious to understand a little bit about how you define sex appeal beyond
Yeah.
physical looks and things like that.
Thank you so much. You know, when you emailed me and I was like, oh, thank you for recognizing and shouting out my class on Masterclass. Such a huge accomplishment for me
It's
and
big. It's
so
amazing, girl.
cool because at the end of the day, really, I wrote a book in 2019 called The Game of Desire. And really, my aha with that book is, y'all, this is like this whole time they have been gagging us, making us feel like attraction is either a thing that you have or you don't. Seduction is a thing that you have or you don't. Being able to be a good flirt, you're born with it or you ain't got it. And I was like, that is not true at all. Like,
Yeah.
there is the LeBron James and then there's the Ben Simmons of basketball, where,
Uh-huh.
hey, maybe you don't have all the natural gifts and maybe you didn't grow up where this was all that you were made to do. But at a certain point in time, you found and fell in love with this thing and you got really good at it. And I think that that was my story. So I wanted for people to understand that sex appeal is not something that you're either born with or you just don't have it. It's something that you can curate and craft for yourself. Of course, while acknowledging the fact that there is preferential marketing for certain body types, for certain
Hmm.
skin colors, for certain heights, for certain kinds of women that allow some to be a part of the preferential group for sex appeal where they don't have to do much. It's already just assumed that they would be good in bed. And to break it down, sex appeal just means like, do people think that you would be appealing to have sex with?
Uh-huh.
And half of that work is done for you at birth, right? You're either born into the group that this generation is marketing as sexy or you're not. And the other half of that work is all about, I would say, freedom. I think what makes somebody feel extremely appealing to have sex with is a genuine air of freedom about them. The freedom to delight and explore, the freedom from societal expectations and tropes and narratives that tell them that they are not allowed to delight in their own body and humanity, and the freedom not to, like somebody who has boundaries, somebody who says no, and somebody who is selective. All of those things I think make up somebody who has a lot of sex appeal.
I love that. Um, I know, in the work that I do with my ladies, that is often something that we talk about, not just like physically, but also in the way that we communicate, right? Even flirting and bantering, which sometimes feels not so comfortable, especially for women of color, right? What role does like the energy and the confidence and the mindset? I love this mindset of freedom, which for many of us people of color can feel hard to feel fully free sometimes, but
Yes.
is something that we're constantly kind of striving for. So I'd love to hear more a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really hard to feel free when you are unsure if you're safe. And
100%.
a lot of, and we talked about safety when you and I were chatting and how much that's such a tent pole and like a fundamental principle of the work that you do. And it's a necessary principle, especially for Black women, for brown women, because you're often in situations that are not safe for you around people who do not mean well for you or don't understand how to love you or make certain assumptions around how much protection that you require. So I do understand that that is a hurdle for people. And I don't have a simple answer for like, simply walk with mace and then you can flirt all you want, right?
Right.
Like there has to be a certain intuition that you develop for yourself based on your environment and a knowingness of what is real versus what is perceived, which can be really difficult to do when all you've known is an unsafe environment. So I just want to say that too, that I do think that being able to be free and flirt freely and have a sense of being completely relaxed, Like your nervous system has two, let's say, operating systems, and like Mac and PC, they can't run at the same time. And that's fight or flight or calm and connect. And in fight or flight, I have metacognition. I'm hyper aware. I can hear everything. I can see everything. My body has adrenaline and I'm ready to flee at a moment's notice. And actually, a lot of men who experience erectile dysfunction, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because your body actually can't get into a sexual state when it's in a heightened state of arousal for fear. And so if you're a man who starts to get into the bedroom with somebody and now you're having fear, like, am I going to get hard? Am I not going to get hard? Your body's not in the calm and connect state that it needs to actually allow itself to experience pleasure and experience connection. So similarly for flirting, I think like if you are in a state of fight or flight, it's hard to get to calm and connect. And calm and connect is when the whole world melts away and it's just me and you. Like I
Yeah.
can just really focus on you and then focus on the small things, right? Like the way that your head is tilting, the way that your pupils are dilating, the way that your breath is, like all of those micro cues that we're all actually designed to pick up in someone else. And we are naturally designed to give off. Similarly to how peacocks, nobody sat there and taught them that little dance and how to put their feathers out.
Right.
That's all ingrained in them. But in order for a peacock to spread its feathers and do its dance, it has to feel like it's in a safe space to go into that mating state because ain't nothing more tasty to a fox than a peacock who's got his big ass feathers out, right? Like, oh, now's my time, I'm a pounce. So you really
Yeah.
have to know that you're in a safe space to do that. So I think safety and flirting have a really massive relationship that people have to acknowledge.
Yeah, definitely. And with that being said, right? Obviously, we get to learn how to find safety within ourselves. It's some of the work that I do. And one of the things I always say is like, start to practice like flirting and these sorts of things online in a less risky environment than say, um, offline or in real life, so that if anything goes haywire or if anything feels not great for you, you can literally unmatch or block or, right, let them know that I'm ready to go, right? And so that's one way of doing it. But I'd love to hear from you, like other ways in which you think people can learn sex appeal. Is it really about like unlocking what's already there? Like what's your take on that?
One of my number one bits of advice is for people to flirt with ugly people.
Girl, I say
And
that too. I say girl ugly, I say old, I say girl flirt with some animals, girl. We don't care.
and I think date ugly people. And I don't mean ugly as
No, girl, don't do that. Don't do that, girl. Don't do that, girl.
to me, what you just said, you have to do something in low stakes environments,
Yeah.
get the feedback loop that you need. And
Yeah.
then, like, it's like trying to slam dunk in the fourth quarter of the finals for the first time.
Hmm.
Even if you could potentially do it, it's just the nerves, the lights, the pressure, and then the scar tissue that you're going to have when you don't do that because you don't know how to do that. And then afterwards, you tell yourself, I can't do this thing. Versus when the stakes are low and you're like, oh, whatever. One, you have more of a naturalness to you, more of an ease to you. And one of the sexiest things is not caring about the result of something. Like that is so sexy when you just do something, not because you're like looking for the validation or for the praise, because people can feel that. And neediness is, from a biological perspective, extremely unsexy to people. Because if we're in the wild and I feel like someone needs me, well, that's one more dependent, right? So we like people who bring and who are additive. And when you are relaxed, and even in those micro moments, right? So if I give you a compliment and I don't need one back, and you could tell in my eyes I don't need one back, there's something so much sexier about that. So, and that's something that's learned over time. Like I worked with pickup artists for, not worked with, but I learned from pickup artists, and they would often say to me, like, they would have, it's just understanding that flirting, approaching people, making the first move, these are not often things that people only feel inspired to do when they have the right person. And I say this to women a lot who are waiting for the right man to like come up to them because they're like, well, if he really liked me, then he would do it. Truth of the matter is, these are learned skills, not dissimilar from riding a bike. And if you don't know how to ride a bike, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be a good romantic partner. So I think that flirting is just a skill and a muscle memory. Again, if you're born into a preferential group and people are just naturally more flirtatious with you, and people will kind of give you that energy, you're able to serendipitously learn without having to manually go out there and try. But if you're not born into that group and maybe again you went to boarding school or you grew up in a Catholic school, this side of you was heavily discouraged, maybe you over-indexed on learning and overachieving, so you were just like, I can't even look at that part of myself. You closed yourself off to that energy for so long. When you're finally ready to invite it in, you just don't have the skill set yet. And I think that's why I say flirt or date with ugly people. And
Yeah.
again, I'm saying ugly so loosely. Whoever to you, you're
That's what I'm
like,
saying. Like,
whoever to in your mind, I could be that ugly person to you that you're like, let me
right.
just try this out with her because I really don't care what happens here. And you
100%.
practice doing that. And then when you do that enough and get a positive feedback, when it is the fourth quarter and the shot clock is running low and you
You
see someone
ready?
that you're really attracted to, it just comes out of you like water, like air.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I was saying, don't do that, girl, because girl, we keep it real here. And that's exactly what I think about it as well. Like, I think it's so important. One of the couple of things that I say to my ladies is when you're talking to, like, when you're out and about, I think it's really important to make the win the actual conversation. I think a lot of women are making the win, getting the number, having him reach back out to me, right? But the win is actually starting or having the conversation. And I love the point that you made about skill set. That we talked about technology earlier. Men don't have the skill set to approach you in the same way that they did. And when we combine that with being in a post-Me Too environment, the pandemic, right? It is actually making it so that a lot of men are actually not going to approach women these days. And so I'm so glad that you're talking about like trying the thing that feels less risky. Oftentimes, I always say, if we don't want to do this, you can always do a flyby, which is walk by someone, say a quick hi or a compliment, and keep on walking. That shares also a bit of like, I don't really care, but I'm connecting, right? And that's what's most I think powerful in those moments. So I'm so glad that you're mentioning all of these different things that I think are so important to help people level up in their confidence as well as their sex appeal. Yeah. Well, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you met your husband, how you kind of got your guy girl?
Yes, I loved I got to hear your story about this, so I'm happy to share mine as well. And you got to meet my husband.
Hmm.
Uh, in essence, I was in a long distance relationship that was all of the things that people probably come to you scarred and broken and wet and exhausted from. So I lived with this person. He had two other kids, and while we were together, I knew about eight different women that he had cheated on me with.
Hmm.
And in addition to that, it's so interesting when I got together with this particular guy. I had a huge crush on him in high school. Like he was the guy to get in high school.
Hmm.
And I remember the first time I saw him, the butterflies that I had. And so years later, when he kind of came back around, which, listen, TLDR, y'all, I feel like a lot of times they come back around. You
They
really don't
always
have to.
will. They always will.
To your point about not having to chase, right? Like you can set the seeds, set the tone, and if it doesn't land years later, like you're going to get your satisfaction. And then oftentimes you're going to look and be like, oh, I'm grateful that we didn't get on that ride. But long story short, years later in my 20s now, he sort of came back around and he was really interested in me, but I just didn't see it with him. But he kept asking me out. And I was like, you know what? It would be nice for this guy to at least be my ex. He's like my high school crush. So I was like, at least I get the story of he was my ex. But when someone like that gets into your life and they're just really good at making you feel terrible, gaslighting you, manipulating you, speaking
Mhm.
down to you, and making you feel like you can't do any better. And then you get into the slot machine effect with them where you've invested this time or you put in these quarters and now you're like, okay, I got to get the payout because I'm going to get up and someone else is going to sit down and reap the benefits off of all of the money that I've put in. Like I've invested so much of myself. Let me at least get the payout. And so I kept putting in my quarters. Long story short, kind of 5 years later, I essentially left Canada to get away from this person. I
Mm.
had a slim chance to come to America. I was able to apply for my visa. And so I moved out here in my car, and that's all I had to my name. I slept on my friend's couch and just tried to start a new life again. But this is like, how much these kinds of relationships can really get their claws in you, even though I had physically separated, broke our lease, got, in order to get to a new state, I was still maintaining a long distance relationship with him and
Mm.
like trying my best to kind of get away and get away in pieces. So when I saw Jared, long story short, no, it was a long story long.
That's fine, girl. That's why we're here. That's why it's called the Get Your Guy Coaching Podcast. Let's talk about it.
When I saw Jared, I had actually just moved to California, and it was a really serendipitous meet because I came here and I took a hosting class because like everyone takes classes here, and I want to talk about sex and relationships. So let me take this hosting class. And when I came, I went to one class, decided I was too good for it. I was like, these are people not too good, but I'm like, I have an expertise. I'm not trying to host entertainment tonight, or I'm not trying to host like cheddar TV. So I was like, I'm not going back to that class. But I made a friend there and we kept in touch. She kept asking me to come out. And she was like, I'm kind of seeing this guy right now. He invited me to this party. Can you come? So we went to this party. I'm still in this long distance relationship. And we met her friend who she was dating. We were kind of vibing. And then my friend was like, her friend was like, I want you to meet this guy. It's his party. And then I turned and it was Jared, my husband. And I was like, oh my God, this guy would be the perfect revenge fuck. Like he just
Mm.
looked like he would make my ex so mad. He was just so cool and effortless and easy. And then I just spent the whole night doing whatever I could to get him to dance with me. I just like, I want this guy to dance with me. So I just kept opening my hips to him. I was throwing it back, like, and he never did. So I was like, ah, whatever. I went home and then I actually saw that he had followed me on Instagram. So because we had that mutual friend in common, he must have like done the digging and the trail, whatever. And I was like, oh, that's nice. Didn't reach out to him and I just kept living my life. But I like we knew that we were following each other online. And he reached out to me and was like, I really love your work. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. He's like, my sister would really enjoy and benefit from it. And this is kind of in the beginning phase of my career. And we didn't do anything with that. And then in October, which is a year after that, I officially broke it off with my ex. And I kind of knew that this was the final one. And then it was Jared's birthday. And I was like, let me shoot a happy birthday, nice message to him.
Uh-huh.
And so I did like just like kind of a like, I've been watching you for a year. I'd love to see how you've grown. And congratulations on all the success. May the next year be as big as the last, or whatever the hell I said. And then
Uh-huh.
he instantly DM'd me and was like, do you want to hang out? I was like, yeah, I want to hang out. And that was it. He came over, we hung out, and we have a less traditional beginning because I was just coming off of this really toxic, damaging relationship, and I had a lot of work to do to rebuild myself back up. I was also kind of on the fritz of deportation at the time. I wasn't allowed to legally work in America, and I didn't necessarily have the money to reapply for my visa. And so I was like, I don't have the capacity for anything serious, but I was in school for sexology at the time and I was learning all these cool new things. And I was like, I want to practice. So I was actually dating tons of guys at the time and auditioning a lot of
Mm-hmm.
guys. I had a really amazing dating life when I met Jared. And he became a part of that story. And I continued to date multiple people. And then he was just the one who continued to, rise to the top. And essentially, maybe it was in October. And then by July, we moved in together and decided that we had to call it something. So that's when we decided to, get into a relationship.
I love that. I love that. And I love to hear everyone's story. I ask this often on my podcast because it looks different for everybody. Right? And I think my intention in having everyone hear these stories is that like let's get outside of the fairy tale of how you imagined it and realize that it's going to happen however it's going to happen and we get to ride the wave of it and be present in the way that it happens for each and every one of us. Yeah. So I love that you shared your experience, which, as you said, was, different. You were dating a lot. There was a lot of exploration, right? But it sounds so beautiful. And I'm so happy that you all met up and are together and have a beautiful family and all of that.
Yeah, it was a blast. Like, I almost wish I got a couple more years of it because that's only the time that I got really good at dating, I would say when I was like 30. And that is because I put in the work. I started to read and research a lot. I started to learn how to be seductive, learn how to be flirty. And I want to say this as a controversial component of like how I got the guy, of I had to learn to become more agreeable. And that is a very contentious word, I think, for a lot of people. But um,
Yeah, say more.
studies show the number one determinant of what, from the Big Five personality assessment, right? So you've got the OCEAN acronym of open, conscientious, extroverted, agreeable, and neurotic. So people are either on either scale. You're either open or you're closed. You're either conscientious or you're a little bit of a scatterbrained. You're extroverted or introverted. You're agreeable or disagreeable. You're neurotic or you're emotionally stable. And I'm extremely disagreeable. So that's kudos to my career, right? Like, there's no other way that somebody who grew up with the background that I did, with the discouragement of expressing myself sexually, becomes a sex educator unless they have a bit of this personality,
Right.
right? Like, unless
FU.
they're
Yeah.
willing to piss off their parents, which I did, piss
Uh-huh.
off their school, like, unless you're willing to be that person, you don't have the career that I have. And that's how I approached everything. It's how I approached friendships, how I approached my relationship with teachers. And in some capacity, it worked. I was an innovator, I was a path paver. People were inspired by me, and people either really liked me or really hated me. That was just always my story. And I was like, well, some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. And when I was starting to research at around the time I met Jared, just about how to flirt, how to seduce, how to get better matches, because I knew coming out of that relationship that I deserved to hit the ground running and I deserved to have the love life and the dating life of abundance and joy and ease
Yeah.
and exploration that I just simply didn't have because I kept getting picked up by weasels in my 20s. Like I
Mm.
was always not preyed on is the right word, but I didn't have a good differentiator. And even if I did, like I knew when I met my ex, this was not the person, but I still was like, well, they're picking me. He's really
Mhm.
pursuing me. He's really hot. So let's just see where it goes. So I knew I just deserved something totally different. And the word agreeable kept coming up in my studies. And of course, that was triggering for me because I don't want to be anything, of polite and nice. But essentially, agreeable means like what's more important to you, getting along or getting your way. And for most of my life, getting my way was more important.
Mm.
So if you have the opposite problem where for you, getting along has always been the priority and you don't really care if you get your way, you need the opposite advice than what I'm providing right now. But I had to really learn how to prioritize getting along. And I'm with somebody who is the milk of human kindness and so sweet, so considerate. And I wanted to offer to him what he was giving back to me.
Mm.
And I wanted to give those opportunities. So I had to really go against my personal instincts for a long time. And I still do. I talk about in marriage, for me, one of my greatest strengths, I think, is my shut the fuck up filter
Uh-huh.
because I can go. Turn left, don't do that, slow down. You're cooking
Right.
it too long, especially when you have kids. Like if
Yeah.
you are somebody who can tend to be like that, you can drive someone crazy and drive somebody away. And that's not something that I wanted to risk happening. So that's a part of myself that I really had to check.
Thank you for sharing that because I think people think that, okay, I get into the relationship and then it's all good, but actually that's when the real work starts.
You have to be in relationships that teach you the things that you want to learn.
Hmm.
I think in my 20s I was a part of a lot of relationships where I learned the things I didn't need to learn, right? Like I didn't need to learn that you can get chlamydia with somebody who has been cheating multiple times but swears this time that they're being faithful to you. I didn't need to learn that you don't move in with the person who owes you money and expect them to be able to help with rent.
Yeah.
So those are, I think when people say like the only way you can learn is by learning the hard way. Like, no, there's a lot of lessons that I could learn by reading a book or talking to somebody else. But for going back to you, what I know of how much pressure you put on yourself and had to overachieve and to strive and to constantly be productive, to have a partner who taught you that like it's okay to prioritize comfort and
Yeah.
relaxation. And it's okay to have rituals that aren't necessarily stereotypically productive or healthy, but instead give you the reset that you require to approach the next productive task with more zest. Like that sounds like a lesson that was so delicious for you in particular. And maybe for somebody else who all they do is do comfort, that's not the right lesson. And I say
Right.
that again because when I talk about disagreeability and agreeability, one of like the biggest critiques in my book is how much I talk about agreeability. And I have to always put the caveat because that may not be the lesson that you need to learn. And you may need to learn the opposite lesson of disagreeability. But that's why you want to look for romantic partners that teach you the kind of things that you ultimately are excited to learn about yourself. And
Excited or also just need to, right? For
there
your
we go.
own development. Sometimes it's not exciting and sometimes you have to be dragged to the party, but it's like good for you, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, totally. Well, Shan, thank you so much for being here. This has been amazing. I'm so glad that we got a chance to talk about so many different things, from porn to sex appeal to flirting to also just kind of what we are learning in our relationships. I appreciate that. And just for everyone's FYI, I'm also on Shan's podcast, so we'll be jointly putting these things out. So when you listen to this one, please go on and listen to hers. Shan, can you just share kind of how people can get to know you a little bit more and some of the things that are coming out for you?
Yes, I loved this conversation. I'm kind of sad it's over. Like, let's just keep it going. Why don't we have a marathon podcast episode? But I am thrilled that people have the opportunity to go over to Lovers by Shan, which is my podcast, and listen to your story. And what a powerful story of connecting the dots. And I still tell the anecdote of how your mom was your first real, like, successful big star client.
Mm.
And hearing about your background and where you came from and where you are today and knowing the success that you have, it all just kind of really connected and made sense. And I'm grateful that people get to hear more about you and hear from you. It's always a strange thing with podcasts,
Yes,
right?
let me tell
When
these
you start a
listeners, girl, because
podcast,
let me wait, hold on. I got to tell the listeners, girl, because Shan, she said, you come in my podcast, but you have to be vulnerable. You got to share your tea, and please believe that that's what I did. So if you have any interest in that, you want to learn the background, the history, the lived experience, you definitely want to check out that episode.
yeah, because it's almost weird because on our own podcast, we interview other people. So it's like people are here because of you and your expertise and your advice. And of course, they get that through some of the questions. But if you really just want more Anwar, strangely enough, you come to my podcast. And if you want more of me, then you come to this episode. So I'm happy to have you here. Also, another place to go is my class on Masterclass.
Yeah,
Today, we did a beautiful job of having framing discussions. The class on Masterclass is literally 2 hours of tips and information and step by
love
step.
that.
Episode one is sex. So we talk about foreplay all the way to aftercare, and each section
Mhm.
has its own tips and takeaways. I give talk about best positions. I have a jewelry line that is inspired by the Kama Sutra that you wear during sex to teach you how to move your body. So I go through positions that prioritize your pleasure and how you can get jewelry to remind you exactly how to move. And episode two is more about what we talked about today, sex appeal and how to frame yourself to get the kinds of connections that maybe again you're not excited to have, but that you ultimately need to have to get to your intimate potential. But hopefully you're excited too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the time. And period.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I'm so happy. So happy that we got a chance to talk about these things. All right, ladies, thank you so much for being with us as we talk about all of these different amazing topics. I will see you on the flip side. Bye bye.